In this segment of From Print to Podcast, we're learning how to navigate the fascinating realm of estate sales, where hidden treasures and unique finds await. Estate sales provide a remarkable opportunity to explore the belongings of individuals and families, often revealing items rich in history and character. Unlike typical yard sales, estate sales occur when someone is downsizing, moving, or maybe even handling the estate of a loved one. Sales can feature a wide variety of items such as vintage furniture, antique collectibles, artwork, household goods, each with its own story to tell. For savvy shoppers and collectors, estate sales offer incredible deals on high-quality items, making them a treasure trove for those looking to add distinctive pieces to their homes or collections. In today's episode, we're diving deeper into the ins and outs of estate sales, exploring tips for both buyers and sellers, the value of understanding the market, and how to uncover those hidden gems. Whether you're a seasoned collector or new to the scene, there's always something to learn in the world of estate sales. I'm thrilled to welcome Suzanne Houck, the owner of Houck Asset Verification, who brings expertise and passion for helping families manage estate sales. Her extensive knowledge means she's not only uncovering valuable items, but you're sharing the stories behind them. Hi, Suzanne. It's wonderful to have you here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I was telling you just before our program started, my husband and I are very interested in estate sales. He's a history teacher, so obviously he's got a background there. And so to learn more about this has been something I've been thinking about for a year now, so I'm thrilled to have you. For those unfamiliar with the whole terminology, if you could first differentiate maybe an estate sale from a yard sale, which are quite popular on Saturday mornings.
Oh, absolutely. Well, the main difference is, one of the main differences is who's having it. Is it the homeowner who is looking to just downsize, or they just want to get rid of some items they're cleaning out, or is it a professional who's liquidating an entire estate? In general, you're likely to find more valuable items in an estate sale than just a yard sale. And because of that, a lot of people are now calling yard sales estate sales.
Oh, that's funny. Of course they are. Of course they are. Well, and so in thinking about that, I mean, tell us a little bit more about estate sales. Like when you are going to find estate sales, how do you even find those, again, differentiating from the yard sale signs that I see on the corner of my neighborhood every day?
Right. Well, it used to be that that estate sale signs or classifieds were really the only way to find them. But now with the internet, there are a host of ways that you can find them. There are two major national sites, estatesales.net and estatesales.org, and you can go in there and you can put in your location and how far you're willing to travel.
Nice.
And if you're interested in certain items, that's good because you can check out estate sales in advance because you'll get notifications and there'll be photographs.
That's interesting.
Yes. But, also, there's Facebook Marketplace, and then there are individual forums on Facebook. There's a Roanoke yard sale site, for example.
I've seen that one pop up.
Sometimes they have a lot of good stuff on that. I hold estate sales from time to time, and I have a proprietary mailing list that I have. And so when somebody wants to get on that mailing list, they'll get advance notice of a sale. So that's another way. It's always good to go and meet the people who are holding the sales and just tell them you're interested, because sometimes we have to hold sales very quickly and we don't have time to really advertise. And so we do it by email or phone calls.
Yeah.
If it's somebody who has a partial estate and they want to sell. So just get to know them. And those are Nextdoor app, for example. They have a selling place on that. Each one comes with the pluses and minuses, of course. You have to consider safety and things like that. But those are the main things, I think.
I love that you've touched on sort of the evolution of the technology that helps you, right? We've gone from searching, scavenging, the listings in a newspaper or magazine, to doing that as well as checking your local Facebook groups and things like that.
Yes.
So that's really interesting. I hope that there's more pros than cons in terms of the technological advancements that help you do such things.
Most definitely. Most definitely.
I also find it super interesting that some of them offer an opportunity to see what's available before you even go. I think that's actually fascinating. How do you prevent a war from breaking out on the site when three people want that same item?
Well, here's the thing. Just because you see it's available,
Sure.
a lot of times the person holding the sale is so busy they can't respond to all the emails in advance.
Sure.
So and they're not going to tell you what the price of one book is. It's just too much stuff out there. But the way we hold sales, and a lot of other people do this as well, is on day one opening, that's when it's the wildest. And so we hand out numbers, and people get there early, so we hand the numbers out, and then we call them in. Depending on the size of the house, we'll let in like 25 at a time. During COVID, of course, we had to do it by appointment, which was a royal pain, but it was necessary. And so then we have staff throughout in each room, and so we try to keep people moving around and trying to prevent fights that way.
Yeah. Have you ever been part of you've seen two people wrestling over something?
It can get ugly. I mean, it can get real ugly. In fact, at the end of this, I was just going to tell you a few things not to do if you wanted to get invited back.
Oh, that's good. Okay, well, we'll save that because that sounds like some pretty good advice. Yeah. So let's talk about we're at the estate sale. I'm there. I'm trying to figure out what I want to look for, but I'm not quite sure where to start. Curious if there are any maybe key things to look for when you're looking for something really valuable. And I know valuable can kind of have a broad term depending on what's valuable to an individual. But
right.
What kind of tips and tricks are you sort of giving first?
Well, first of all, let's assume that you're not a collector of any one particular thing.
All right.
You just want to see what's going on at an estate sale. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, all the items are priced. And if they're not, there's a sign that might say CDs, $1, or hardback books, $4 or whatever. So so most everything is going to be priced. But so if you're not a collector of any one particular thing, you need to keep in mind quality, condition, and desirability. And I want to say condition right up there, number one.
Okay.
Because if something is once upon a time was really nice, but now it's in horrible condition, it's a trashed table. Mm-hmm. So who cares if it's 18th century? It doesn't matter. It's not going to bring any value to it. So so condition is extremely important. Quality is next, and that goes across every collectible area: furniture, silver, crystal, glass, porcelain, art, everything. So if the quality is better, of course, it's going to be more valuable. But desirability plays into it, because if it's great quality, it's an old sofa that your grandmother bought, but she never sat on it. Or that she put plastic on it.
Plastic cover on it.
Yeah, so it's in great condition, but nobody wants it. It's not going to be worth anything. So then you also have to look at, when you're looking at the quality, what are the materials in the item? Are they expensive materials or not? Mm-hmm. And that might help you.
Yeah, so. You really kind of have to know some stuff before you go. I mean, quality of cloth and fabric is interesting if you're not familiar with that. How do you know?
Well, if you're talking maybe vintage clothing, first of all, let me just say that people have different ideas of what vintage actually means.
Well, I hear that things from my Doc Martens in the 90s that I'm wearing right now are vintage, and that hurts me
I was just
little.
reading that anything before 1990, and I was like, what?
That hurts my feelings, I got to be honest.
I think the true aficionados would say 50 years or more.
Okay, all right. That's
but
a good stand.
There are caveats to everything, of course. But yeah, so when you're looking at vintage clothing, for example, okay, you have to look at the material, and again, condition.
Right.
If it's shredded, it's not going to be worth anything. Right. So you look at the material. A lot of times they were, wool, cotton, silk. They didn't have a lot of these blended ones. And then they might have a lot of hand stitching. The zippers might be different. The buttons might be really unique buttons. They might be hand-blown glass, or just something unique about that. Or the style is really unique. So if it's a dress that's pinched in at the waist and has a flared skirt, well, you pretty much know that's going to be maybe the 50s or whatever. And then if it has a label in there by a manufacturer who's important, like a Yves Saint Laurent or Dior or you come across a shirt that's all these bright colors and it has a Poochie tag in it, then you might stop and go, wait, what is this? Which brings me to another topic or tip, tags. Just like signatures with paintings, which we can talk about later. Tags are really important because they can help you with dating. There's a site, I believe it's called Fashion Guild, and they have a whole library of labels, and they will help you date items.
Wow!
So, for example, there's an international ladies workers union, I think, fabric. I can't remember exactly.
There's probably 100 of them.
Yeah. There's, but anyway, they started putting those labels in in the 30s.
Wow.
So if you have those, and then there's a label that says lot, L-O-T. Like sometimes you'll look in and it'll say lot. I think they stopped doing that in the late 70s.
Wow.
Is what
So
I
you
was
see
told.
that, you maybe already know.
Well, yeah. And also the labels that talk about how to take care of the clothing. That'll give you a lot of clues as to how.
Don't throw
how
my
old that
cashmere
is.
in the washing machine. Type of thing.
Supposedly, the phrase "made in America" was petering out at the end of the 70s when we started shifting a lot of the manufacturing overseas. I think that is coming back, though, because I've been seeing a lot of newer clothes with that on it. But so the tags tell you a whole lot about the item. I've run across some Hermes or Gucci scarves, silk. And you have to look at there are lots of reproductions of those out there. You have to look at the way the hem is done on those. Are they hand stitched or are they machine stitched? And of course, you have to know how to tell the difference.
Right.
So, but
I got a lot to learn from you.
Yeah, just a lot of tips like that. Yeah,
no, that's great. And so I know we're talking about vintage clothing. I could literally talk about that all day.
Right.
Actually, so our next segment was with Winrose Boutique, and we're talking about Fair Trade Month in October,
nice.
which lends to sustainability. And so obviously a lot of what we're talking about does relate to sustainability and making sure that these beloved items for years are still kept and not thrown away or trashed. And so, I won't bore everybody with clothing, but in terms of other types of items that tend to hold their value, we talked about artwork, maybe furniture or collectibles. What are some other items that really hold value that you'd want to keep an eye out for?
Well, let me just make a comment about the sustainability issue. That's one of my marketing tools for estate sales, particularly during COVID when the supply chains were all messed up. I would say, okay, you don't have to wait for this piece. You see it, you like it, you buy it, you take it, you take it home. But then I've noticed that a lot of those, let's say in the late 20s to mid 40 demographic, they're concerned with the carbon footprint. And so they are saying, when they buy the antiques, they feel like they're helping the environment a little bit more like that. So I think that's pretty neat. And I think that actually is probably contributing to brown furniture, as the derogatory term is nowadays, creeping back up. And I do see it slowly creeping back up because I think people are really tired of moving a lot and their furniture getting trashed because it's from IKEA or it's Wayfair and it's just not good quality, and they want a piece that's going to last. So you start to see like mahogany dressers in a room that might have a lot of very contemporary other decorations in there or furniture. But so you asked what holds its value.
And obviously it depends on the things we talked about, quality and that
well,
nature.
That's always the caveat.
Right.
Consider all things being equal, quality, condition, desirability. There's certain things that people are always looking for. And
Picasso's, obviously.
The art is a whole different topic.
We'll talk days about that.
Yeah, that's a whole nother topic. But yes, if it's somebody known or somebody local and it's in good condition, and you can look it up and see if there's a market for it, then yes, that's a good thing to buy. But other things that might be a surprise are I don't know, first edition books.
Oh, my favorite. I love that. Can't afford one, but I can't wait to have one.
That's a whole nother topic as well.
Right.
You have to learn how to determine whether or not one's first edition and condition. And you have to be able to compare apples to apples. And then other books that might not be first editions, but still might be important. I did an appraisal once, and the client brought out a book, and it was so heavy. I thought, what is this? It was huge. And it was called Goat, G-O-A-T, and it was in a kid leather case, and it was about Muhammad Ali. It was a $3,000 book. So, you have that. But there is an app called Book Scouter.
Okay.
That you can put on your phone, and when you go in there, you can scan the ISBN number, and you can see what it's selling for.
I want to hang out on there just because.
Right, yeah. See, so there are little tricks like that that you can take in there with you and scan them. But books, people are always looking for really good gardening tools, yard tools.
Really? That's interesting.
Because it used to be, like some of them were really well made.
Yeah.
And they're just, really well seasoned. Tools. Cast iron pans. They're
that
always,
one does not we live in the South.
always going to be popular. Now that's compared with like the Pyrex dishes. Everybody calls me, I've got these Pyrex dishes, and I saw on eBay that they're worth $10,000. I'm like, well, that was the asking price. That was not the selling price. There's a big difference in that. But so let's see. So you have that. We talked about vintage furniture. Then in the category of furniture, it's interesting. Small pieces that are transportable, like end tables, they always sell really well. And mirrors, everybody loves mirrors. Yes, and lamps, they love lamps. Crystal is dead. Sterling silver always sells. We never sell it below its melt value, but it's certainly not. It didn't hold its value that you paid for it. But those are some of the main things that we see.
I got to be honest, this garden tool thing is still like surprising to me.
And pots.
Okay.
People go crazy. And they'll even buy like, oh, here's some grass seed. How much is this? What? It's like, what? Okay.
Well, maybe it's cheaper than where you get it elsewhere in town.
Well,
so.
yeah, exactly.
But that's interesting too.
Christmas decorations.
Really?
Some of those are old and unique, and
That's
so
so
people,
funny.
Really, really interesting. So
you've blown
those
my
are a
mind.
few
I think
things.
I've never thought about that.
Yeah.
Man, I want to go in like 13 directions with this conversation, so you got to reel me back in. But in thinking about, let's go back to art, decorative items at estate sales. You're thinking about factors that contribute to the value of it. How do you identify that? I mean, again, you've listed a couple of apps and sort of things to look out for, but it seems like such a big responsibility to keep track of all those things. And I need you on my side. I need you walking with me to all the things and pointing out like what works.
Well, it is a huge topic, and I think my one superpower as an appraiser is that I know what I don't know, but I know where to go find the answer. But I mean, again, like when I go in, if I know absolutely zip about something, I look at the quality of it, how, and the condition of it.
And a hand stitch versus a machine stitch.
Yes. And is it unique? Is it funky? Usually the little radar goes off in my head like, I don't know about that. I don't know that artist. But something's going off. So, quick story.
Yeah.
I went to a client's house, and they told me everything they wanted me to appraise for insurance purposes. And as I was walking through a little den, they had a treadmill set up in there, and leaned against the treadmill was this painting. And they also had a bunch of clothing hanging on that too, so it was kind of hard to see. But I could see just enough of it. It was not framed, and it looked like a lavender and black crossword puzzle, the entire thing. And I thought, well, that's kind of weird. That's kind of funky. And then I looked down in the corner, and I saw initials, CPLY, and I thought, I don't know, something just went off in the back of my mind. I didn't know who it was, but I said, do you mind if I research this too? And if it's not anything, then, it's no skin off your nose, but it might be something. Well, it turned out it was something, and the last name was Copley, and I sold it for the client for $55,000. And they love me.
Yeah, I bet they do. Oh my gosh, I got to find some art like right now. Man, how do you actually? So that's wild, $55,000. That's a good question though, segging in, because for example, my husband and I are always thinking about art, and we want to put art on the walls, and we're kind of done with the mass-produced stuff. We want something that's very funky, individual, unique to us. And I want to look for example, living in Roanoke, there's so many wonderful artists in this area.
Absolutely.
How do you, this might not be estate sale adjacent, but like, how do you decide to, this local artist, no, I cannot predict their trajectory, and I don't know if they're going to be famous in, 30 years, but how do you look for a really great piece of art by a local artist? Whether you're looking for, you're not saying I'm going to sell it at a high value in 50 years, but still.
Well, first of all, you've heard this before, but you should always buy what you love. And so not worry about it. If you're buying for an investment, you're going to need to do a lot more research. Okay. And nobody really has a crystal ball. One thing I can say for sure is just when an artist dies, that does not automatically mean the price goes up. Okay, everybody thinks that is the case, but it's not. And it's been interesting. I've worked in 5 different art galleries, and one thing I've noticed is that the gallery owner might find a new artist and then really want to promote them. So the gallery pays for the articles on them in the local, not local, but national magazines as well. And then they host big parties for them. So they're creating the hype for that artist. And so the artist sells really well, and their prices are really high for a while. And then all of a sudden, they lose interest in the artist, or the artist dies, or they switch from landscapes to really abstract, and they're not as popular. So the value completely goes down. So, if the artist does not have that support or does not have the skill to create like incredible pieces of art that stand on their own right, or they don't have a really wild personality like Salvador Dali, who really was the marketer, then there's no real value.
That's just so interesting, because you think about things that you're buying now, and I know, I'm almost 40, so put myself in that age group you were talking about earlier. But in thinking about how do I see something that's going to be valuable to me for, the next hopefully 40 or so years,
Well, it might not be. I mean, I have pieces that I've had for 30 years, and I'm like, I am so tired of that. I'm going to get rid of that. But, there are people that, in this area, like Eric Fitzpatrick.
Oh my gosh, I wasn't going to say it, but thank you.
I mean, everybody loves him. His pieces are always going to sell.
Yes, I want one of his pieces no matter what it is. I don't care.
It's always going to be popular.
Yeah.
Always, always, always. So,
That's so funny.
Just have to take those personalities, and he's got a personality.
Wow. We literally did our last podcast episode live in his studio, and it was wild to see how many mediums and how many every single inch of his house is covered in art that he has created, and it is wild. And I could go in there and pick out 13 pieces immediately I'd want to take home with me. And whether they increase in value or not, I think you've made the excellent point that as long as you love it, that's what matters the most.
Right. Just go get it reframed.
Right. I love that. That's a good tip. Okay, cool. So let's talk about some common mistakes, because I'm sure people make them at estate sales, and not just about paying more than what it might be worth, but, common mistakes people make when shopping at estate sales. How can we avoid those, besides me just putting you in my pocket and taking you with me to the estate sale?
Common mistakes. Well, I mean, there's always the impulse buy.
Well, and I am so guilty of that. Oh my gosh. Just ask how many shoes I have in my closet. So
another mistake is, if you really love it and it's a fair price on day one, you need to go ahead and buy it, because it won't be there. Usually estate sales are firm on the first day, and the second day they reduce prices, and third day it's dramatically.
So some people might hang out thinking it'll go down.
But, some other mistakes, let's see. Buying electronics without first testing them out.
It is 2024 too, so
right.
Interesting.
Everything is non-returnable.
Right.
So, like maybe not trying on clothes. And I just saw a tip where if you take a pair of pants, have you seen that? Where you take a pair of pants and
that's supposed to,
if it goes around your neck, these are going to fit.
Does that work?
Yeah. I haven't tried it.
Me neither.
But I doubt it very seriously.
That's hysterical.
So, I mean, I was going to talk about this at the end, but maybe a few of the mistakes that people make. You're not going to get a better price if you go in there entirely entitled and obnoxious.
Well, that's just a life rule. Yes, agreed. Hard agree.
Another mistake is bringing unruly kids in there. You can't concentrate on what you're shopping. It's disruptive to the others.
They're
Don't bring
really
your dog
worried.
in either.
Yeah.
I love dogs. I love cats. But an estate sale's not the place for them.
That tail's going to knock a glass thing over off a shelf, and it's going to be ugly. Yeah.
Another thing, well, I don't know that it's so much a mistake, but it's a don't do this. Yeah. People hoard items. And they go around and they come in with their own baskets and their own sold stickers.
No.
Yeah, they come in with their own sold stickers and put them on there.
Guys,
and so I'm like, no, you don't get that till you pay for it. And then they'll put them off to the side, preventing other people from buying them, and then they decide not to buy some of them. So we try really hard not to let that happen.
Squirrel them away in a little
spot.
The
other thing people do is switch tags. So if you do that, you're never coming back to one of our sales.
Yeah.
But also you have to make sure that it's marked properly. And, I'll say the motivation to sell and at what price really trickles down from the owner and how motivated they are. So one thing, there are polite ways to ask, even on day one, if there's a better price. If you come into my sale and you're a client and you're buying $5,000 worth of property, and you come up to me with an item, you say, is this the best price? I'm likely to work with you, on that.
Right.
So,
you don't want to haggle necessarily.
Right, right.
So one of the things that really sparked the conversation of the Great Estate Sale, we tend to watch a lot of Blue Ridge PBS where...
Antiques Roadshow.
There it is. Okay, cool. So you're familiar, I think. And so I'm wondering about, there had to be probably a surge of popularity when this show came out. And I know it's been out for years and years and years, but I'm sure there's always like a resurgence of people who've watched this show and suddenly get very interested in going to any estate sale that they can find and just hoping that they find something of value.
Absolutely. I'm shaking my head because this comes up every week.
I know. Sorry, I had to.
No, that's okay. I will say I lived in Phoenix for a while, and the roadshow came to Tucson, and some of my friends were the appraisers on there, and so they said, "Come on down, visit. We'll get you some tickets." So I got there, and the line wrapped around the Civic Center like 3 times, and I'd taken a friend with me, and she said, "Oh no, do we have to wait?" And I said, "Oh no, I got tickets."
Yeah.
So I walked in there, and the security grabbed me and said, "Come on, we need you over here." I'm like, "What?" So they said, "We need you to man this table." I'm like, "What?" So I was like, "Okay." And
you are an expert.
It was the glass table, and this woman, I saw her coming from afar. She came over. She had this piece of iridescent glass known as carnival glass, and she set it down real carefully, and she was just so proud of it. She said, "My great aunt, who was really wealthy, gave me this."
Oh no!
And I said, "Well, what would you like to know?" She said, "Well, how much is it worth?" I said, "Well, for insurance, it's probably $35. Well, she grabbed it back up. She was highly incensed. This was in the 90s, and so she just went to argue with me. She said, that can't be right. My aunt had a lot of money." And so it just so happens that the country's leading expert from Bolton, Massachusetts, was next to me.
Oh, good.
Name's Louise Luther. She's expert in Tiffany. And she came over and she said, "What's going on over here?" And I said, "Well, she brought this in." She said, "That's a $30 piece." And I was like, "Oh, see, I just made you $5 there." Yes. So she grabbed it and stormed off. But then they moved me to the textile table. And I was thinking about this when we were talking about vintage earlier. I saw this person coming with a 4x4 foot framed piece under glass. And in the middle was about a 3-inch square little piece of lace. And that was it. And I said, "Oh, my goodness, well, what do we have here?" And she said, "Oh, this is a piece of lace from Marie Antoinette's parasol."
I swear I was going to joke about, was that from Marie Antoinette's dress? Oh my gosh. Okay. We're on the same page. And was
I said,
it?
"Really?" I said, "So do you have some family documentation?" No. But the family's known this for a long time. And I said, "I'm sorry. We can't put a value on that for many reasons. One, we can't prove it unless we can find her parasol and match it up.
Get the piece that was missing.
Yeah, or we can find comparables for a piece this size and in this condition from someone of that stature." So anyway, but the roadshow is, it's real interesting.
I do love it. And of course, you have the very end where everyone's like, "I thought I was going to bring in this thing and it was going to be $3,000 and it's $35.
Yeah. Well, that's the fun part, is when I get to tell people that they have something that they don't have any clue, because people in general don't know what they have.
No.
They either think it's worth way too much or that it's not worth anything.
Right.
So.
Well, and that's so fascinating. And hopefully, it's not too... you're the expert, so, not too many people are trying to elbow you through to tell you that you're wrong. But I do love that we get to watch that show, and you do see people who have, been handed down something from their family or did go to an estate sale and lucked out on this incredible Tiffany lamp or artwork or whatever it is.
When I went up to Winterthur, when it was like was it COVID? During COVID? But anyway, I went up there for the roadshow, and I was walking past the line because, of course, I had the VIP pass.
Yeah, naturally.
And a friend of mine invited me up there too, and I took my sister, and she said, "Did you see that person? They were standing in that long line. They just had a poster." And I said, "No." Well, so, and she said, "Well, it was stupid. It was of a Campbell's soup can." And I was like, "Oh, where was that?"
It? Yeah.
It was a Warhol.
I was just about to say.
And she got featured, that person.
That's
and
exciting.
It was a $55,000 piece. And her ex-husband had let her keep that. That was the one thing, because he thought it was worth nothing. So anyway, that was really funny.
But I love that, because it does excite people. And I think, hopefully it does excite you when people are enthusiastic about that and they want to be part of it. And, again, my husband being a history teacher, there's some value in his beliefs in the antiques and family pieces that are passed down.
Well, let me just make a comment. You were talking about how to tell, if something is, valuable or collectible, and you bring up history. You have to look at what the piece is too. And if it didn't even exist in the time frame that it's, you're not going to find an 18th century telephone
Right.
stand.
Dead giveaway, huh?
You're not going to find a photograph of George Washington.
No?
He died in the late 18th century, and photographs, daguerreotypes anyway, didn't come about till the early. That
seems obvious, and I feel like you run into that a lot.
But people just don't know. It's funny because I posted on my Facebook page one day an item. It was about 3 inches long with sterling silver, like a little rod, and on the end it had about a 1/2-inch flat piece that looked like maybe a wax stamp that they used to use on letters. And I said, does anybody know what this is? Well, nobody had a clue. They all guessed like a wax stamp or whatnot. Well, it was it was in a Tiffany box too, by the way. So
my favorite kind of box.
Yeah. So look for that color.
Yeah,
too,
no kidding.
But anyway, it ended up being a rotary phone dialer.
Nobody would know what that is nowadays,
No,
certainly.
no.
He'll take in a rotary phone to the school, and the kids have no idea. They don't even know how to pick it up and ring the numbers. It's wild.
Well, I always contend that taking in a silver service from the 18th century and showing a history class would teach them a lot about the society of that time. Their traditions, what they ate. I mean, everything.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Man, this is going to go on all day. I could talk to you about all. If you find a first edition Pride and Prejudice, just know that I want to be the first person you call. That's all I got to say.
Or Harry Potter, Philosopher's Stone.
Don't even joke. Don't even bait me with that, because we could be here all day. So in thinking about if I wanted to learn more about estate sales, I want to start my journey. Maybe I want to learn more about a specific era or a specific, kind of item. How do I get started? Not to necessarily do your job, but if I'm looking to be a collector of something.
Well, I would first look for collectors groups on Facebook, because there's a wealth of information there, and you can read through a lot of those. There's also a professional estate sellers site. I read every day.
Cool.
So I see what's going on, what people are finding, what problems they're having, whatnot. And then not on Facebook, but just on the internet, collectors clubs, because there are all kinds of libraries inside those and reference sources. And then there's some apps that you can get, or you can look up on your laptop or computer, that will help you research some of the prices and help you learn about that. That's a whole nother topic, but just in general, you've got worthpoint.com. That is a fee-based site, so you have to pay for that monthly. A free one is Live Auctioneers. That's plural, liveauctioneers.com. You can put in the search term what you're looking for. You can see where it's being sold, estimates. You can also do sold price, so you can see what it actually sold for. But it's important to look at the date. When did it sell for that? Because maybe the market's drastically changed. So you have to just look at what it is that you're interested in, and then you just have to start your research. There's no quick answer. There's no one particular
You got to really love it. So, fun fact, my very first job, I was like 13 or 14, and I worked for my father, who was an auctioneer. And so he would do, every once in a while, we'd run into an estate sale, and it's funny that you're talking about the people swapping tags and stuff, because he'd somehow put the 13-year-old as the bodyguard, and I'd have to tell people to stop doing that. But it's so interesting to me that that is still something that happens. And again, I love the technology, because this was, almost 30 years ago. So certainly it was fight for your life in the middle of the estate sale while the auctioneer just sort of yells out numbers. And
well, when I first got started, I had to go to auctions and just sit there and record prices.
Yeah.
I mean, and then when I would take pictures, I would take pictures of things and have to stop. If I was at an estate all day, I'd have to leave to go get them developed. And then if I had to get a specialist to help me out and send them the photos, I'd have to wait for them to send them back.
Now you can do it all on your phone right there by you.
It's crazy. But it's funny. I'm looking at the Roanoke magazines right over here, and I just found one in some of my parents' possessions after they passed, and it was from the 70s. I'm like, what is this? And I started looking through it. I was in an ad. Okay, it is so funny, because my mother started the consignment store, the Golden Shoestring. And and it's still going today. I
know.
And
I love the
and
stuff
I was
in there.
in an ad for that, and I was the youngest director, manager when I was 16. But at that time, we did carry a few household items too, in addition to men's clothes, children's clothes, and so maybe that's how I got interested.
I think
in
that
this.
sparked a passion, And I love looking at their Instagram and things like that, because it is something that you see where a beautiful Gucci scarf and they're selling it at a wonderful price compared to what it might normally be. But that's an item that will clearly last you forever.
Okay, let me throw this out there.
Yeah, please do.
God, see, we needed an hour.
I know.
But purses. I mean, Golden Shoestring sells a lot of them.
My mom's favorite
thing. They
thing.
know how to identify them. But I've had estate sales where I had the beautiful Louis Vuitton, but it was Louis Photon, like Faux, and I could not. I mean, I researched them and they weren't the real thing, but they really looked correct, but they weren't. So we're not allowed to sell those. Nobody is.
Sure.
Because if you do, it's trademark infringement and it's fraud. But you see them out all the time. I mean, there's a business here who has a sale once a year. Somebody comes down from New York with the fake bags and they sell them, but they sell them as fake, and they think that because they sell them as fake that that's okay, but it's not.
Definitely not. Also, I want the real thing. Like if I'm gonna do it, I want the real deal,
right?
Like the real bag.
And those are really fun to research. Once you know what to look for, they're just nitpicky things. Oops.
Yeah, I think my thing would be vintage clothing and shoes. I love that so much. But there's so, like you said, there's so many ways to do it. There's certainly no easy way to start. You just really have to figure out what it is that you love if you're looking for a specific collection or item. And of course, I love the idea of just going to an estate sale and just browsing, just seeing what inspires you there. If you're not quite sure, like maybe I don't want to collect stamps, but I see something else that I really think is neat. I think that's really cool.
The bane of my existence.
Stamps coins and stamps,
coins. I mean, there are collectors, there are collections of coins and stamps, and then there are accumulations. Most of what I see are accumulations. People will come with a bag and they'll say, look, oh, here are the coins. My dad was a big collector. Well, they're in terrible condition.
Right.
Right.
So. Or it's a bunch of quarters.
Exactly.
Oh. All right. So last question before we let you go, but you're clearly involved in the local community. Your expertise is just unbelievably just knowledge is out the roof, just ridiculous. I can tell. Some of your favorite local spots for hidden gems or unique finds. You mentioned Golden Shoestring as somebody that is always there. We could always pop into that location, right?
Right.
Where are you, without giving away too many of your trade secrets, obviously.
I was going to say, this is kind of like when you find a good babysitter.
Right. You
don't want to give that out. So, I mean, I hate to say this, but there's no one place because it's the thrill of the find. You never know what you're going to find or where you're going to find it. I mean, you can find something really great at a yard sale,
right?
So, but you just have to know how to look,
right?
I mean, when you're looking at, well, let's say somebody has a jewelry box. Don't just like open the lid. If it has a drawer, pull the drawer out all the way.
Yeah,
there might be something that pushes, pushed in the back. If paintings, like I had a acquaintance who had a sale where the sisters one was supposed to get a ring and one was supposed to get the painting, and the one who got the painting, like 10 years later, it took it to have it reframed, and they found the ring in between the stretcher and the canvas because the wood shrinks across the grain, and so their mother had hidden it back there. So,
well, I got a lot of follow-up to that.
Yeah, so you have to, you have to look carefully at things.
Yeah.
So you have to look in things, around things, under things.
That's so.
I had very quick story. I had an appraisal where it was a divorce, and there was a missing ring. I don't want to give away too much because confidentiality. And I was in, one was accusing the other, and there was a restraining order. And I was looking in at a vase. It was a Majolica vase, which is, for those who don't know, colored lead glazes, a lot of different colors. And I needed to see the bottom of it to see if it had a maker's mark, if it was American or English. And when I turned it over, I noticed the flowers that were in it were plastic, and they were very dusty. And the vase was not dusty. I thought, well, this is kind of weird. Why is that? So when I turned it over, I heard this. I thought, what is that? I pulled the flowers out, ring dropped in my hand.
You're like you're like Indiana Jones.
You're like hidden. It was hidden.
Now I want to know who hid it. I got a lot of follow up to all these stories.
Yeah, I can find things. My husband says you need to write a book about all
you
the
should.
Weird things
You
I
should.
found.
But I love it, and I love the point you made about being sort of a treasure hunter, and that's sort of Dan Smith wrote the piece in our September October feature, and it was very much a tinge on this is a great thing to do if you love adventure seeking and treasure hunting. It's not just about something you really love, but maybe you stumble upon something really amazing.
And a treasure can be something that doesn't have any value.
Absolutely. And I love that you've also pointed out, not just for estate sales, but you do this for insurance purposes. I think that's another important point that I'd really like to point out, because if you have things of value, or you have items you think may be of value, that your services are critical to making sure that if something were to happen to your home or whatever, you have that in writing and knowing that it's on your side.
Yes, I did an appraisal for a woman, and she said, "How long is this going to take?" And I said, "Well, I mean, a house this size, it's going to take probably 3 weeks." And she said, "Well, I'm leaving tomorrow." And I said, "Well, I've gotten all the photographs and all the information." Wouldn't you know, the truck wrecked and everything burned up. So at least I had all the information.
Thank goodness.
But I also have done appraisals for grand theft, for murder.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay. Well, we're going to have you back. That's ridiculous. That's murder. How do you drop that on me and then we're going to leave? That's crazy. No, that's just so fascinating. And you really are like a treasure hunter of like the highest quality. I think that's just so cool.
Yeah. Oh, it is fun.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show
this
today.
Has been really fun.
Oh, we're gonna have you back because this has been wild, and we got a lot of stories we got to follow up on here. But again, Suzanne Houck, thank you for sharing your insights, valuable information about estate sales. Your expertise is absolutely critical for those trying to navigate this very interesting and Wild West world, I think. And listeners, please don't miss out on the opportunity to connect with Suzanne and explore the treasures she will help you uncover. You can learn more about her services at verifyassets.com, and we'll be sure to list that over on our website where this podcast episode is listed. Thank you again for joining us on this episode of From Print to Podcast. And if you enjoyed the conversation, please don't forget to subscribe for every episode. You can also read our Great Estate Sale feature and get inspired with more beautiful homes coverage and tips for your own spaces over on our website at theroanoker.com.